Hello and good morning, everybody. My name is Mandy Tice. I am the director of School of Atelier Arts, and welcome to our online class about painting a sphere en grisaille, which means painting in black and white. Previously in this class, we went through the entire process of painting a sphere. We did drawing, background, ground plane, front plane, shadow side, our first pass on the sphere. And now we're kind of doing the finishing pass. So for the last few days, we've been doing a finishing pass, and we're going to continue with that. In particular, today, I hope that you can see this, but if you squint your eyes where you're like closing them so tight and you just barely open them, you might see that there's the tiniest bit of a point happening with the light on our sphere. And that's what we're going to work on today, is making this not feel like a point, making it feel like a very smooth, even transition into the rest of our sphere. So you can see there's a couple big jumps between values between here and here, here and here, and especially where this point is kind of forming right here. So that is what we are going to do today. Excuse me. Go ahead and say hello in the chat. I love hearing from you. I love knowing that I'm spewing information out in the universe, but that somebody out there is receiving it. It's always a comforting thought. And just to review, this is our last week of this project. So Friday will be our last day on this project. I hope that you'll consider joining us in our online Atelier Painting Bootcamp. We're going to be starting a drapery painting project exclusively for bootcamp students. You can learn more at the schoolofatelierarts.com website under online art classes. And good morning, Leola and Marguerite. So good to see people this morning. I love a good Thursday morning paint. I don't know why. I get good momentum by Thursdays. So I'm excited to paint today. I don't have a lot of new information for you. It's very similar to what we've been doing, but just staying on track. The hard part about a finishing pass is staying on track, not getting distracted, not getting lost. So we've already decided what our big idea is today. We're trying to eliminate this point, and we're working on this lower portion. Now, it might be tempting at some point to start hopping around the other parts of the sphere, and occasionally you will be hopping, but for the most part, if you're hopping, it's to fix this problem. Our big thesis today is, how do we get the light to not feel like it's going to a point right there? All right. So without further ado, I'm just going to hop in. I am going to try to pull the camera just really, really tight and close today, because we're working on really small increments, and I want to get you as up close as you can. Please note that the camera is doing you all a favor, that it is differentiating a little bit more than what it's actually being seen in real life. When you're painting this in real life, if you are only keeping your nose in the painting, you're not going to be able to see the small increments of change. Your best bet as a painter at home is to give yourself distance from your painting, make your choices from 5 to 10 feet away, and then come up, because it's much more difficult to see when you're doing it and the closer you are. One of the reasons even the camera is giving you a better differentiation in some of these areas is because it's further away than my eyes are even right now to the subject. So be mindful that the more refined you get, the more crazy you'll feel, because you'll be like, where was I? What was I doing? Because, the less abrupt the fixes are, we're refining. So the less abrupt the fixes are, the more easy it is to get lost or not be able to find them again. So you have to develop your visual memory, remembering where you are on your palette, remembering where you are on your canvas, stepping back when you get lost to make sure that your eye is seeing the right changes, and recognizing that when your nose is up close, you're not necessarily going to be seeing small increments of change. Love coffee. I'm like, just one more sip before before we really get into it, and I make my brain burn. Mm. Okay, and I am really excited with what we're going to be doing with the online boot camp, because when we go into drapery in that online class, and I hope you'll join us, we're basically taking all these concepts. We're going into full color from grisaille, but we're still going to be working with white drapery. So there's going to be a lot of similarity, a lot of form. We're going to be finding core shadows and seeing how form wraps around. We're going to be talking about the different types of folds there are and how each of them behave as a form. So if you have enjoyed the sphere painting class, the next step is this drapery class. So I hope you'll join us there. I love my coffee too, Ellen, and I hope you'll join us for the drapery class. It'd be lovely to have you there. All right. So, okay, I said I was going to work on this corner. The hardest part for me is getting this first note down, right? You've been away. You don't really remember where you are on your palette. Just look at the palette again for those of you. If you want a reminder on how to mix up the value steps, please see episode 2 in this series. But we use a 9-step value scale where 1 is our white, 9 is our black, and then we have the steps in between. When you're mixing your value scale, you want to find the halfway point, and then the halfway point between the halfway points, and then the halfway points between the halfway points between the halfway points. The reason for that is that it gives you a more even transition between values. Even these that I have on my palette right now, this value scale is skewing just a little bit dark. Do you see how it stays dark for longer and suddenly gets light? So even doing the halfway thing, this particular set of strings skew just a little bit dark. Excuse me. Okay, this point is making me crazy. So I'm going to try matching what's directly underneath the point and then just pull out and trying to soften this point here. And it's a wild guess, really, what the color is that I need. All right, that looks a touch light. That's a touch dark. We need something in between those two. Okay, so I've kind of matched what was there. And even already that softened it a little bit. Part of what's creating the point is that my core shadow is wider here than it is down here. And so it's making it look like it's changing directions a little bit. So if I widen it just a touch down here, I think it's going to help with that feel of the point softening a little bit. All right, so that helped. That's nice. Remember that whenever you're painting, you need an overriding thesis. What is it that you're trying to do? And every piece of paint that you put down should be upholding that thesis, right? Because what tends to happen is, people will start with one problem, then find another problem, then find another problem, and they don't fix any problem all the way, and then things get derailed, you know? So try to maintain one idea in your head at a time. And already we've made significant progress on getting rid of that point. I thought it was going to be more in the lights, but just kind of adjusting the core shadow a little bit here has helped immensely. We still have a little bit of a corner pooling. That's too light. And again, that visual memory that you build up over time is your best friend. It'll help you remember where you are, what color, where you are on your palette, where you are on your painting. It's a little too dark. I'm darkening this just a little bit. We keep pushing and pulling the shadow here and there. And, we did say that underneath the sphere is a little bit darker, but right now it's feeling just a touch flat. So I'm just going to make sure that we have the round feel, even though this part of our sphere is transitioning exactly into the shadow. The dark was looking just a little bit flat here. So I wanted to just make sure that it was still having a rounded feel. Okay, but I just did the thing that I told you not to do, right? I found a different problem. This wasn't about the pointiness, right? It just happened to be near where I was. So I just did the thing that I said don't do. So I did it on purpose to show you what not to do. All right, I'm gonna try to get you guys just really, really in here. Um, all right, so again, just working across this point, trying to soften it. These are really small increments of change. This is not a big change happening in here to adjust this. Excuse me. All right, that's too light. That's too dark. Don't panic. It's really hard to just blindly go in and match what you're going for. It takes a few tries. So if you go in expecting to hit the perfect note on the first try, you might be disappointed. If you go in assuming that you're going to have an imperfect note, you won't get so flustered. It's a little too light. It's a little too dark. It's really easy when you're making an adjustment in one area to add a mistake in a different area, right? So, it'd be really easy to make it too dark pulling out of there because there was a little corner of light that was too light before. So it's easy to over adjust. When I'm teaching in my online painting boot camp, when I'm drawing, students will upload pictures of what they're working on, and I have my iPad that I'll draw on top of it. And I'll often exaggerate a little bit what the correction is because whenever you're correcting, you're going to be pulled in the direction of what's already there. And sometimes you have to think a little bit beyond where you intend to go, just like adjusting a color, right? If you put a color note down that's too dark, you have to over exaggerate the light because it's going to pick up what's underneath it. All right, so we're starting to soften a touch. It's feeling better. I'm still getting a little bit of a dip. It feels like right here. It's feeling like it's dipping just a little bit. So I try to do this. Oops, that's too dark. Especially the finishing pass, you're going to be doing a lot of adjusting. Oh, that's too dark. Oh, that's too light. These are really small increments of change. It's possible that some of these changes I'm making right now, you might not yet be able to see. It takes some training to see smaller and smaller increments of value change, chroma change, etc. So if you're watching this and you're like, what are you doing? I don't even see a difference. Don't panic. Just trying to look for it will actually teach your eye to start seeing it. So if you're feeling like a crazy person right now, you're not crazy. It just takes a little bit of practice and experience looking for these values in order to start seeing them. Okay, how are we feeling about this point? It's still feeling pointy down in here. But we do have a nice underpainting, like all the paint that's down there now is wet. So we have something to mix into. Okay, we're getting there. Now, some of these other transitions are just a little bit abrupt. That's too light. That's too dark. Still a little too dark. We don't want any dent-looking things in our sphere. Okay, so we're starting to make some progress here. We're starting to soften this. This edge does get really soft, so part of our problem is just, some of these abrupt transitions here, being mindful of them and softening them a touch. It's too dark. Okay, now I'm starting to get bigger in my paint strokes. Remember that we don't want to be tempted to do the windshield wiper thing. We want to really maintain what we're doing across here. Um, I'm seeing some messages in the chat like, oh, I might do the random thing, like a little bit here or there, a little bit of everywhere. That definitely happens. And then yeah, it's interesting because you guys are seeing this through the lens of a camera, which is giving you a little bit more clarity than what you're going to see in real life. So that's something that when you start. Oh, why did I do that? That's something that when if you haven't already started painting along, and I hope that you have, or even just sketched along with a pencil and paper. That's the great thing about painting in grisaille is you don't need any special materials to learn something. You can literally just do it in pencil if that's what you have at home. All right, this is too dark. I got ahead of myself here. Actually, maybe it's not too dark. That seemed to somehow fix things. All right, so I'm going to work on these other transitions here. These ones, that's too dark. The values that are on this part of the sphere that I'm working on now, they're decent values. It's just that there's a big jump between them. So basically what I'm doing is I'm finding values in between. Just trying to smooth these transitions out. It's too dark. So we're definitely just on a mellower track today, right? Just tackling one thing at a time. Smoothing out transitions. I see some down here that could use a little help. Oh, too dark. This really is a small increment of change I'm working on right now, like maybe a third of a step, but just trying to get it to read so that we don't have such an abruptness. And you can see that took me a few times to kind of get in there. It looks like we still have something's going on, like right here. Like there's one little light spot sticking in down there. No, we just have to be patient. So it's like right here. Be careful too. I was making the brush strokes like this, but it's exactly parallel to my light source, and it was putting a glare on that was affecting my ability to see the color. Sometimes it's these little things that affect us more than we realize. So how you lay your brush strokes down is going to affect how it reads, because if it's catching a lot of glare from the light, it's going to read lighter than what you think it is. Ugh, too dark. Too light. And you can take a painting, to an extreme on a finishing pass. Some people do multiple finishing passes. Um, I tend I usually don't paint this tight necessarily in my day-to-day work, in part because I paint a lot of florals. You can check out my Instagram at Mandy Fine Artist if you're curious. And so because I paint from life and florals have this habit of dying, I tend not to do a high finishing pass on a lot of my paintings. But for something like this, for student work, you want to know what your boundaries are. You want to know what you're capable of, right? So, on these academic projects, I try to push my students as far as I can get them to go, um, because I'd rather you have the ability to do a highly refined pass and not need it than need the ability and not have it. I've been ignoring the chat. So there's a question. I was wondering if the camera was helping us because I can see the changes pretty clearly and quickly. So good to know my eye by itself will be slower. Yeah, I really like, I can't even take a picture and post it and really get it across. So is It's one of the few things that you just have to experience for yourself, and you'll see, when you're doing this, that it's a little bit challenging to get this small of increments of change, and that the best way to make it look like how the camera's looking now is to stand back. That'll help you find it. And I was saying it feels so good when you get it just right, just watching it. Yeah, it is. It's like, watching somebody with a puzzle and then, being like, "Oh, we're missing this piece. Where is that piece?" And then it finally goes in and it's so satisfying. So satisfying. All right. It's a little dark. Mm. I'm always tempted, especially when I'm teaching, like, "Oh, I'm gonna do this much today." Right? But sometimes the painting tells you, right? What you don't wanna do is just rush through anything. Um, you're on your painting's time. It takes however long it takes, right? Oh, too dark. Correcting a piece that you put down that's too light or too dark is also a skill that you'll develop with time, right? You just have to not panic. You might, do an hour session where you only get 2 tiles done because you put one that's too light, then too dark, but as long as you keep adjusting them, it's never a waste of time. Never feel like, "Oh, I only did, like, an inch of my painting," right? It's never a waste. If you're thoughtful, you're learning a lot. People think that we start in one corner of painting and and have a perfect painting on the other side. But the reality is to paint like an atelier trained person, it requires atelier training. And guess what? Atelier training takes time, right? It takes time to train your eye to see, small increments of change. And so sometimes students, they feel really frustrated because they're like, "Oh, I only painted a dime worth of canvas today, like just a really tiny portion of my canvas." And but if they painted it well and with good habits, they learned a lot. But it's hard to see that when you're a student, you know? Like, this is like my 30th try here. Okay, so again, I started with the thesis today. Can I get rid of this point? And I feel good that I'm making progress in getting rid of this point. Um, all right, so Leo is saying it's interesting that my eyes are drawn to the dark, but when I do the proper squint, it immediately shows a white ball. Yeah, yeah, it's amazing, especially when you spend a lot of time staring at something. Your eyes get tired, like they physically get tired, and so we call it fresh eyes. It's like the great advantage in the morning when you first sit down to paint, and it helps you see better too. Standing back helps you see better. There's all sorts of things that we do as painters to help us. Um, but yeah, the sphere, the white ball, the sphere, it's all the same. I knew what you were talking about. Okay. So just continuing here. We definitely can merge this side of the sphere a little bit more carefully in with what's going on around it. We want to be careful, especially when we're adjusting in the lighter areas, that we want the sphere to read white. And it's really easy for these midtones to keep spreading inwards and make the ball look dirty. See, I said ball too. Need a clean napkin here. Too dark. Okay, I feel like we're starting to get the point back a little bit. So just want to make sure that this dark is nice and rounded. I feel like especially here, just need to emphasize the dark a touch. We really want this to feel like it's wrapping quickly around the sphere. Okay, so still focused on this point. I'm still getting this vibe of the point. Now I'm looking, I'm getting a little bit of glare. I'm rotating this because I want to make sure that you're seeing it without the glare. Sometimes if you're fussing with something for a long time, you just have to go bold and put something in. So, I keep fighting this point and I'm having a hard time making it go away. So I'm just going to be a little more bold. There we go. All right. Now, some of my strokes of my paintbrush are getting a little long. Don't fall into that swishy windshield wiper trap that we talk about. You want to make sure that we're painting across the form, going this way, not like root, 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 root. So I'm extending the midtones a little bit more because that's what's creating the roundness of the sphere. Now I feel like I have a point over here a little bit. Okay, we're getting there. Now we have some bigger transitions on this side to adjust. Oops, a little too dark. Again, you want to be careful as you approach any edge ever. And it does get slightly darker underneath here. Remember that the least amount of reflected light is bouncing in this area of our sphere. Just one adjustment at a time. Oh, that was too dark. I want to be careful that this isn't migrating too high. Do you see how it's starting to go whoop? It's migrating a little high. So sometimes when you do that, instead of working from the dark side to the light, sometimes it helps to work from the light side to the dark. I've been neglecting the chat, so I'm going to answer a few questions. Would the gradient on the cast shadow be circular, elliptical? Would you be as particular about the cast shadow? So the gradient, it's basically the further away from the object that's casting the shadow, the fuzzier and lighter it's going to be because more bouncing light is into it. The reason there's less bouncing light here is because the object is so close to the shadow, and here the shadow is so far away from the object. So there is a gradient. It looks like a little bit of a roundness here, but really it's just a matter of distance, right? And it's a radial distance because we have a circular object casting an ellipse. So really, the darkest part is here, and then kind of on this radial gradient is how it would get lighter. And so I see another comment here. After the precision, I'm having a hard time with words. Precision on the sphere, I'm seeing straighter lines on the cast shadow. Would not have noticed if you hadn't spent so much time prospecting the sphere. Yeah, it's all relative. Sometimes students think that what the problem that they're having is X when it's really Y or Z, right? Because you have to understand how everything is influencing your eye all the time. Okay. I'm just fixing some transition stuff there. Okay, so, again, we're getting close to this edge up here. Oh, that's way too dark. Too dark. All right, now I definitely have a divot in here. So I need to make some adjustments. Okay. I'm feeling a lot better about this overall. We mostly got rid of our point. We have a little bit of a pointy feel over here, maybe. All right. There is a touch of glare that's still hitting the painting. I'm trying to make my strokes make it so the glare isn't so obvious because it is reading a little bit off in the camera here. All right. I feel myself starting to rush a little bit. That's usually a sign that it's time to take a break. In this case, we're almost out of time, so I think I'm gonna take a pause here. Let's see how I feel about the point. This weird thing is happening where it looks like light is coming through here. Let me adjust the screen here. And I think that's just a reflection because that's not what I'm seeing. Um, it's so interesting seeing it through the camera versus in real life. Mhm. I'm fairly certain that it's just catching. Uh, I still feel like I have this point like right here. You can tell that I'm getting tired and I'm rushing a little bit because my strokes are getting bigger. sometimes you have to know what your tells are, right? Like if you're playing poker, like, people have like twitches or whatever that you're supposed to look out for. I don't know. I'm not a poker player. I'm just using what I know from movies. But you have to know your own tells as a painter, right? There are certain things that you're going to do that you'll learn means that you're doing the wrong thing. So if you find yourself rushing or making big brush strokes, to me, that's a sign that danger, danger, right? Oh, all right. Now I'm just making a mess. I'm just like still not satisfied. I'm still feeling this point. The point's migrating, but I'm still feeling it. That was my one goal today, to get rid of the point. My light just did a big change as well. Oh, see, what am I doing right now? This is uh this is when you know that you need a break. Okay, we got a ton of glare on here. So when I block the glare, do you see that we have a sphere? And then when I don't block the glare, do you see how it's crazy? It's because we still have snow here and it's blinding even with those screens. So I'm gonna have to start working hardcore on my thing. But we have the roundness and we no longer have the point as long as I'm blocking the glare. So that's what we wanted today. We're winning. Yeah, look at that light coming in. It's crazy. Time to work on some studio adjustments, I think. Um, okay. Yeah, my brain's saying it's enough too. Oh, welcome, K Art. So nice to have you. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. Glad to have a new subscriber joining us. So we are on our last week of the sphere painting here. After this week on Mondays, I'm going to continue presenting live at 9 a.m. And then, that will be, kind of shorter question and answer. The next big project that we're doing is going to be in my online class exclusively for my online atelier painting bootcamp. So if you're enjoying this class, I hope you'll consider joining our bootcamp. I do have a free gift So this is a little lesson plan that teaches you how to key values in a drawing, or if you're painting in en grisaille, which is what our project is. So you can scan that with your phone or type in the URL there for a free gift. So thank you for coming and being here today. And so, excuse me. Okay, so for let's see, today's Wednesday. So Thursday and Friday, we're just going to continue working sans glare. I'm going to continue working on this to do the upper part of our sphere, and then one last pass, really blasting the light here, really getting our light making a lot of sense. So thank you all so much for being here. It's always delightful having you, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Happy painting, everybody.